These stuffed rolls are absolutely to die for. Once you start eating them, you won't be able to stop. They are so addictive that you'll find yourself reaching for another and another. The best part? You don't need an oven to make them, and they're incredibly budget-friendly, costing less than 50 cents per roll. That's right, homemade deliciousness at a fraction of the cost you'd expect, all while being super easy to prepare. The dough requires only 4 simple ingredients, and there's no yeast involved, which means there's no need to worry about waiting for the dough to rise or dealing with any of the complications that come with yeast-based recipes. Let's dive into the process of making these irresistible rolls. First, gather your ingredients. You'll need flour, milk, butter, and a bit of salt. To start, measure out 300 grams of flour and place it into a large mixing bowl. This is going to form the base of our dough. Next, add a pinch of salt. This helps to enhance the flavor of the dough. Mix the salt and flour together thoroughly so that the salt is evenly distributed throughout the mixture. Once everything is combined, we can start adding the wet ingredients that will bring the dough to life. Now, pour in 250 milliliters of warm milk. It's important to make sure that the milk is just warm, not too hot or cold, as this will help to achieve the perfect dough consistency. After the milk, melt 40 grams of butter and add it to the mixture. The butter will make the dough richer and give it a nice, soft texture when cooked. At this point, we'll begin mixing everything together with a spatula. Initially, the dough will be a bit sticky and wet, but that's okay. We're just getting started. As you mix, you'll notice the dough gradually coming together into a more cohesive mass. After a few minutes of stirring, it's time to add a little more flour. Now, add another 100 grams of flour, bringing the total to 400 grams. You could technically add all of the flour at once from the beginning, but I prefer to add it in stages to ensure everything is well combined and smooth. The goal here is to achieve a dough that is soft, pliable, and easy to work with, without being overly sticky or dry. As you continue mixing, you'll notice the dough becoming more manageable. It should start to pull away from the sides of the bowl, forming a ball. Don't worry if it's still a little sticky. That's what the next step is for. Once your dough has come together, transfer it to a floured work surface. The extra flour will help prevent it from sticking to the surface and make it easier to handle. Knead the dough gently, folding it over itself a few times until it's smooth and elastic. You don't need to knead it for too long, just enough to ensure that all the ingredients are fully combined and the dough is homogeneous. After kneading, shape the dough into a smooth ball. Lightly flour both the work surface and your hands to make this process easier, especially if the dough is still a bit sticky. Now that you've formed a ball, cover it with plastic wrap and let it rest. This resting period allows the dough to relax and become more supple, making it easier to roll out later on. Place the dough in the refrigerator for at least 10 minutes. If you have more time on your hands, I recommend letting it rest for 30 minutes to 1 hour. The longer it rests, the more elastic and easy to work with it will become. During this time, you can move on to preparing the filling for your stuffed rolls. For the filling, I like to use 300 grams of shredded mozzarella cheese because it melts beautifully and adds a deliciously gooey texture to the rolls. However, you can use any type of cheese you prefer. Whether it's cheddar, Gouda, or even a mix of several kinds of cheese, the choice is yours. In addition to the cheese, you'll need some kind of protein. I opted for chicken bacon, which I cut into thin strips, but you can use any type of meat or charcuterie that you like. Salami, ham, turkey, or even a vegetarian option like sautéed mushrooms or roasted vegetables would work well in this recipe. Once you've prepped your cheese and meat, set them aside while the dough continues to rest. If you want to get creative, you could also prepare a more elaborate filling. For example, you could cook some ground beef or chicken with onions, garlic, and spices to create a flavorful stuffing. Adding vegetables like spinach, bell peppers, Or zucchini could also be a great way to enhance the flavor and texture of the rolls. The possibilities are endless, so feel free to experiment and tailor the filling to your taste preferences. After the dough has rested for about an hour, take it out of the refrigerator and place it back onto a floured work surface. You'll notice that the dough is now much softer and easier to handle. Lightly flour the top of the dough and your rolling pin to prevent sticking. Begin by dividing the dough into 8 equal pieces. If you prefer larger rolls, you can divide it into 4 pieces instead. Alternatively, if you want to make smaller, bite-sized rolls, divide the dough into 10 or even 12 pieces. This recipe is highly versatile, so you can adjust the size and quantity of the rolls based on your preferences or the number of people you're serving. Working with one piece of dough at a time, roll each piece into a small, rough circle on the floured work surface. Don't worry too much about making the circles perfectly round, just focus on getting them evenly thin. As you roll out the dough, keep adding small amounts of flour to prevent it from sticking to the surface or the rolling pin. Once you've rolled out the dough to your desired thickness, it's time to add the filling. Take a generous handful of shredded cheese and place it in the center of the dough circle. Then, add a portion of your chosen meat or filling on top of the cheese. You want to make sure there's enough filling to create a delicious, hearty roll, but not so much that it overflows when you try to seal the dough. Once the filling is in place, carefully fold the edges of the dough toward the center, pinching them together to seal the filling inside. It's important to pinch the edges firmly to prevent the cheese from leaking out during cooking. After sealing the dough, use a rolling pin to gently flatten the roll slightly, ensuring the edges are fully sealed. Then, flip the roll over and roll it out a bit more to create a slightly flatter, more uniform shape. Be careful not to roll it too thin, as you don't want the filling to burst out during cooking. Once all of your rolls are filled and sealed, it's time to cook them. Heat a skillet over medium heat and add a small amount of butter to melt. Place the rolls in the skillet, seam side down, and cook them for 2 to 3 minutes on the first side until they're golden brown. Flip the rolls and cook for another 2 to 3 minutes on the other side. If you find that the rolls aren't fully cooked after this time, you can flip them back to the first side and cook them for an additional minute or 2. The goal is to achieve a perfectly golden, crispy exterior while ensuring that the filling is hot and melted inside. Repeat this process with the remaining rolls, cooking them in batches if necessary. Once they're all cooked, serve them immediately while they're still warm and the cheese is gooey. These stuffed rolls are best enjoyed fresh off the skillet, but they can also be reheated if you have any leftovers, though I doubt you will. And that's it. You now have a batch of delicious, cheesy, and savory stuffed rolls that are sure to impress anyone who tries them.